kind of building off of what you said about fiber, something that I think is very much in kind of the zeitgeist of nutrition right now is the carnivore diet. And I can say anecdotally that like it actually works really well as a reset, meaning like I'll just give my exact example. Is like coming off the holiday, I think it was 2 years ago, like I had just been I think we had drank like 3 times in a 2 week period because family's in. We were still eating good, but just not as healthy as we typically would, not as balanced as we typically would. And so I tested doing it for a month, and now I've since done it a couple of times. And what I will say is that eating that diet for that month period of nothing but basically red meat, like you do feel a level of both mental clarity and then even digestive health was really good after the first like 8 days. So would love for you to talk on that, just kind of your thoughts surrounding that, because I am seeing more and more use when it comes to gut health of kind of reduction diets, which might be more just effective simply because you're eliminating it's actually what you're not eating, not what you are eating. But would love to get your thoughts, because I've seen really good success too with like doing 4-day bone broth fast, meaning like a great reset of just having bone broth with salt for 4 days, and it's like you feel after then like you're digesting your food better. And that's even, this may sound weird to the listeners, but even looking at your poop after, like it's like, hey, there's something changed for the better here. So would love to hear your thoughts kind of surrounding that as well.
Yeah, this is really interesting conversation, and it comes up a lot. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of carnivore being a very useful sort of acute type treatment diet for some individuals. In clinic, we see it really effective for those who have gut related issues like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, candida, autoimmune conditions where, their immune system is sort of taken off and they have inflammation that's kind of out of control, and their immune system is sort of like turned on, for lack of a better term, or hyper turned on. So by removing some of these foods that can be problematic, for example, take SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. When you eat plant foods and you have SIBO, a lot of the plant foods that we're eating start getting sort of fermented and broken down higher up in the GI tract, and that causes like insane bloating. For some people, it's bloating, discomfort, GI distress, lots of bowel movement irregularity, all that stuff. When we remove that, which is sort of like the trigger, their symptoms will go away and they perceive like, oh my God, I fixed something. The issue is with SIBO, for example, the bacterial overgrowth, the reason why that was happening is still persistent. So the carnivore diet is not like, the removal of the plant food is not the root cause of it. It's more like a trigger. So I do think for individuals who say, I have really good success in the carnivore diet, sometimes it is reflective of the fact their gut is just not optimal. And so they don't have the capacity, or they're having some kind of like root cause reason why digesting the normal plant foods is problematic. I would say that's a lot of people. And for every single patient who comes into the practice that I work for, most of your listeners, or maybe some of them, will know I work for Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, who we have a medical practice. She practices with sort of a more functional, holistic approach paired with sort of conventional medicine. We do a really good job of bringing the two worlds sort of together. And I mean, we don't have one patient we don't run gut stool tests on, the comprehensive stool tests. We test for parasites, we test for all kinds of things, because like you said, a lot of people's, chronic issues will start in the gut. And I'm not a physician, and so I can't really speak to this in like a really official stance, but from what I've seen in clinic where I'm collaborating with the physicians with these clients to address their nutrition, once we address like the candida that's overgrowing, which is a yeast that overgrows, or the SIBO, or someone has H. pylori, a lot of these are sort of like overgrowths, infections, things that are getting away on them in the gut that causes like downstream imbalance in the rest of the gut microbes. Once we address those like higher level issues, a lot of the time, all of these things resolve. And then you get back to a state where you can digest food properly. However, it could take, 1 to 2 years to get back to that point. Sometimes our gut rebuild repair protocols are three months, maybe even longer for some people, to even just start rebuilding after an infection or something like that, or a parasite that's been really virulent. So in my experience, the carnivore diet, I don't perceive to be something that someone should be on for life, because they do lack the fiber, the short chain fatty acids, some of these compounds that really encourage colonic health. So like health of the lower intestine and the bacterial populations that need that food to grow and be optimal. But I do think for a short period, or as a way to maybe address some of these symptoms, I think it's really, really good strategy. We implement it a lot.
And do you, when you're looking, you just referenced kind of like a 3-month approach to, and I forget the actual phrase you used, but like kind of a healing plan for your digestive system. Could you give, because I think another thing you called out that I personally don't think is being talked about enough is the things like parasite, fungal overgrowth. I know you mentioned a few. Like, it blows my mind because you can eat their specific diets for like fungal overgrowth, and like when you start to test those things, even if you're not somebody where it's blatantly obvious that you have that, it's like, do some tests where you eat a diet that's specifically catered towards that, and you'll realize like, whoa, the mental clarity you feel and how these things are influencing you in a way that you don't, and you, not that you don't even know, but you'll start blaming other things. And that's what I love what you said of like, hey, get it upstream, because a lot of times there's a lot of little things that'll clear themselves up that it makes what you're solving for much less complex. But I'd love to kind of double tap on and of course, you don't need to lay out every specific of it, but if you can just kind of broad stroke, what are some of the principles of that 3-month plan to really get somebody that, and you could use a specific example of like, say you want to do a parasite one, because I'm sure they vary depending on what is found within your unique stool sample, but give us kind of the founding principle or the principles of what a good 3-month kind of like healing plan for somebody's gut looks like.
Well, I would say first it involves treating whatever the issue is. So this is like, treatment is first. And for something like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that requires antibiotics. The best practice there is antibiotics. There are herbal protocols that can be utilized either in conjunction or as a stand-in for antibiotics. But I think the standard practice, at least from my perspective, is an antibiotic. So first line is, if you do recognize there's a parasite, you have to treat it. And that can be, a couple days of a treatment. That could be 14 days of a treatment. It really depends on what's going on. And then once that gets treated, especially if you're using antibiotics, for example, then you just, you've done a number on your gut because you've had to kill some bacteria that are living in there. So you need to take a really kind of thorough and slow approach to rebuilding what you've kind of just zapped. So we implement things like probiotics, immune support for the gut, like through an IgG supplement, like with the immunoglobulins. We do prebiotics in that. We use peptides like BPC 157, oral peptide BPC 157. We will supplement specific probiotic strains sometimes, like Akkermansia, for example. So yeah, and glutamine, because glutamine is sort of like food for your gut, the cells of your gut lining. So we always provide glutamine as part of our repair rebuild protocol. Because if you think about your gut, it's only one cell thick. Literally, the barrier between the outside world and the inside of your body is one cell thick. It's kind of interesting to think about, like, your GI tract is actually outside the body. If you think about that, it's like what's in your GI tract is actually not in your body yet. It has to cross over those cells to get into your body, even though it's like in your body at the same time. That sort of messes with me. But that one cell is, sometimes they can be really compromised by chronic inflammation. Even high stress can compromise the integrity of that gut lining because it is so fickle. It's one cell thick. So really making a concerted effort to repair that after some of these really intense treatment protocols is super important.